Okay, let's get rolling here. Beginning of day 7. Hope I can keep track of these days as I go through here. Okay, what's today's plan? Well, we did the bulk of the work here on this side. There's still plenty to do to really clean this up. But the metal is there, and we can freshen this up later. You know, we got dents to work out, but we need to do the same thing on this side. So, got to cut some up there, bring it around, tack it in place. I'm going to try a different approach this time. I'm going to see if I can tack it and then use the wheel to cut. I don't know. It can't be worse than the last one where I had to jump, you know, 1/8 of an inch there. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so I'm going to get busy here chopping out some of the bad metal that's still there. Using the spot weld chisel to whack out some of that what's left in those pinch welds, and then doing a dry fit that looks pretty good. I'm gonna start drilling some holes here so I can do my own spot welds, and then just kind of like tap it into place, get it all lined up. Where they overlap there, I did a chop, so it's right down the middle. It's a perfect seam, and try and get these spot welds in, so I can then move on to the bottom half of the seam. Use the big angle grinder here for the mostly straight parts, and then I'll weld this up, get this half of it anyway, get it all welded up good before I move on to cutting what's left of the near the angle there. But it's just, you know, tons and tons of the welds. And yeah, so move the camera, get a little better view here. I'm using this different uh, cutting wheel because the wheel's much smaller, so hopefully I don't end up with such a big gap because that big wheel comes around and then whacks out some metal. And then I just rinse and repeat. Drill some holes so I can spot weld them in, tap it down into place where it needs to be, and start welding it up. Easy peasy. It's just doing lots and lots of welds. Continue welding here. Honestly, this is the tedious part, and it's hard to see where when they get really close together. It's hard to see. Okay, it's time for lunch, but I thought I'd just take a quick assessment of where we're at. You can see where I did the bulk of the welding already, filling in the gaps. Still got this to go here. The other method where I used the main angle grinder here for the straight, that's not a problem. I had a problem where I made the turn here. And the smaller wheel grinder cut slower, but I think it was actually a little bit better. I didn't end up with giant, well, as giant gaps to fill. And I should be able to wrap this up here in the next couple hours and get this done for today. You know, do stuff like this, weld this, grind all these down, make it nice and smooth. I got some other sanding wheels coming in for next week. It's really more of a finish sander instead of the angle grinder flat disc, which takes off a little bit too much material at any given time. Anyway, that's where we're at. Okay, so I'm gonna move on here. Do some more welding. You saw that there's a bunch of gaps left on the second half as you make that bend there in the corner. I need to get all that welded up so that I can move on to then grinding all those tacks down to get it, closer to a finish. So I'm using kind of an older disc here, thinking that it was going to be better, that it wouldn't take off too much at any given time. But actually, what I think is happening is that I'm having to put too much pressure on the old flap disc, which overheats the metal, causes metal to distort, ends up with a bad grind. So I'm using a brand new flap disc here, and it is cutting a lot better. Okay, here we are. All the major work has done, all the major welding. There's still some touch-up to be done, and I'm waiting for different sanding discs to come in so I can sand this little bit down here. I don't want to sand too much with the flap disc on the front here because this is really thin on the back side. There's most likely surface rust that is, I can kind of feel it down in here. Not really, but there are some areas where I know that the rust had gotten behind because when I would go to weld, it would burn right through. It just pop. And so you have to kind of chase the hole until you get to some heavy metal and a weld will stick, and then you can build it back. But the main thing is if you sand too much with a flap disc, you can sand through the metal, weaken it. So I'm going to wait for the different small sanding discs to come. And I think before I wrap up today, I'm going to try the Unispot to pull out a couple of these, couple areas, and see if this nose is going to be savable. So this device here, you basically you take these things that look kind of like a weird little copper nail with no point on it, and you spot weld them in place, and then you use a little slide hammer to pull on it, and you can see that it pulls these dents out nicely. That area there, there's like a crease that's probably about 10 inches long. It's not a hard crease. You could tell where a tire had pushed in, and so you end up with a big piece of metal that wants to go doink doink all the time. Okay, let's wrap this up for today. Day 7 here. What did we get done today? Well, we finished up all the primary welding here for the window channel here at the bottom. If you look back a couple of videos, you'll see just how terrible this was. Really was not here. There was less metal than there was metal. We still got some work to do, right? And probably a little bit up there. But, the main part is done. I went ahead and did some pulling on this guy, and yeah, this is popping out pretty good. Got rid of a couple of the big dents here. So now the shape is more like it ought to be. So I'm pretty pleased with that. This is going to need some more sanding because there's still enough rust on the surface that the Unispotter can't get a good ground in places. So I'm going to have to go down more, and most likely I'm going to be using a flat disc to do that because the 220 grit sander is just going to take an eternity to get down through that. The front end seems to be, I think, the worst. I hope. I don't want to flat disc the entire friggin' van, but yeah, that's where we are. End of part 7. Thanks for watching.